Let's do this.
It's time for Hanging with Langan.
I like that she's got a big dirty mouth that gets her in trouble.
Wow.
Stop me, 'cause I'm having a good time.
Hey, you guys! Thanks for being here with Hanging with Langan. Another podcast episode. If you're watching this, we are doing this live. Share it. Just hit the share button below the video, and that makes the magic happen because I have a great guest coming up. And you can also watch it on the Hanging with Langan Facebook group. And if you do that, we love seeing your name, your comments with that. What you need to do is go to StreamYard.com/Facebook and put your name in there. Just do that. Click on the blue button. You don't even have to put your name in. StreamYard.com/Facebook. Click on the blue button. Then I get to see your name along with your comments. And what we do here is I do a weekly show on Facebook Live and YouTube. And then from there, we promote it on all the major audio platforms. So we're setting that all up for you now. I want to let you know, part of being a comic that I love is I meet really interesting people along the way. And you know what I do here? I interview everyone from academics to alcoholics and everyone in between. So I was working with this gentleman in Pennsylvania, in Doylestown, a couple of weeks ago. And his name is Steve Young. He's a comic. He's an award-winning television writer. He is a father. He is a former comedy club owner. He's been out in LA. He's done so much, but he's written a book, and the book is called, I'm going to show you right now, babies. The book is called, here we go. It's called Great Failures of the Extremely Successful. Great Failures of the Extremely Successful, Mistakes, Adversity, Failure, and Other Stepping Stones to Success. And what's interesting about this is he has people like the actor, the director, the stand-up comedian, Robert Townsend. He has the mistress of knowing all about chimpanzees, I love her, Jane Goodall, and Larry Gelbart, one of the original television comedy writers, your show of shows with Sid Caesar, and Betty White. There's so many cool people in this book. And what's really interesting is to see the adversity they've had to overcome. Everybody overcomes adversity. Chuck Lorre, who is the king of sitcoms, he's done like 8 million. So what he did is in this book, he has gotten their stories and has a book filled with them. And I want to chat with him more about how he got them to be a part of his book and what are their stories. So let's get this started. We'll take your comments too. Take your comments, send a comment. All right, so here we go. Please welcome Steve Young. Great Failure of the Extremely Successful. Hi, Steve.
Hi.
So I was very impressed with you and your book when we worked together. You know that.
You told me. That was very nice of you.
Well, it was sincere. But what I want to understand about this is, first of all, this is chock full of famous people. People who've come before us, decades before us, who set the groundwork for so much that is here today. And what I want to ask you is, how the hell did you interview all of them, or how did you get all these people in your book?
Bribery, taking them hostage. It's funny. I was just, now I'm going to start remembering a lot of things. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I was working on a television show with Betty White. And somebody had said to me, you have to write what you know. And because we know the show was going to be canceled. And so I thought, well, I'll write a book.
What show was it? Well, what was the show then?
Maybe this time. Maybe
maybe not. Maybe not that time.
We hated that title because it gave the critics just a softball. And there were a lot of great people who were on the show, but we were Saturday night. It doesn't matter. So anyway,
it sucked. It tanked.
Yeah. So I said, somebody said to me, "You have to write what you know." And so I said, "Well, I'm very familiar with failure. I'm very good at it. I practiced it for years." And I was going to kind of write an article. And instead, what I did is I went to Betty White and I said, "I have this idea for a book. Do you mind if I interview you?" And she's a doll. And she just opened up and gave me really an intimate story. And I was writing for Written by Magazine, the magazine for the Writers Guild, and I wrote an article called "I'm Not a Young Writer, but I Play One on TV," and it was basically all tools or tricks for people to use so that executive producers would think they're younger.
Yeah.
Like when you do an interview, always do, when you're pitching an idea, do it while laying on the floor so the loose skin from the front of your face will fall to the back of your head. And
exactly.
Or stay close enough that you can put your hand. Yeah, exactly. Oh, how interesting, Debonair.
Such a good interview.
So she's 30 what? And so I put this article in, and the only real person I mentioned in it was Larry Gelbart. And I mentioned it. It was like a 6-page article. And the reason I did it is...
Well, let's set up who Larry Gelbart is, because believe it or not, many people don't know.
That's a shame. Wonderful guy. He wrote a ton of things. He was doing the original Sid Caesar show of shows. He wrote On the Way to the Roman Forum. He wrote Tootsie. Oh God.
So much.
And a real sweet guy. And I put it in there. I said, don't ever put your awards, your Emmy Awards, on your resume if they're previous to 2000, because it'll show how old you are, except if you're Larry Gelbart. And oh, by the way, he did MASH too.
MASH, he did MASH. Larry Gelbart did MASH, of course. MASH,
the TV show. So
yeah,
I put it in there because I knew he had to be reading this, and he read it, and he contacted me, and he said, this should be a book. And I said, well, I've never written a book.
Wait, he contacted you? Larry Gelbart contacted you from a letter an article I
wrote. I put it
for
in
the Writers Guild.
So he would contact me. That's why I put it in there. And he contacted me, and I said, I've never written a book. He said, well, let me send you to my publisher. He sent me to his publisher. He set up the meeting, and they said, do you have any, that's cute. That was a cute thing that you wrote there, but we're looking for something motivational. Do you have anything motivational? And I said, well, I have this thing I did with Betty White. And they said, well, cool. We see that. And I sent them that chapter. That's all I had done. And they said, we're buying it. And it was,
wow.
And then I sat down with some wonderful people over there. In fact, one of the publishers over there, Stern, was one of the creators of Get Smart. So I was like in a wonderful world, And so I went out and I interviewed all these people, and I would go up to people and just say, would you be in my book? But I have to tell you, I had to hone that, because the first person I walked up to, I wasn't prepared. I was at on Ventura Boulevard, not Maiden House. And anyway, it was a deli, and I went up to Pete Rose, and the baseball player.
And he punched you.
Well, no, he didn't.
Only Buddy Harrelson, he does that too. Sorry, I got confused.
The Mets. So I went up to him, and I said to him, unprepared, of course, I said, Pete, I'm doing a book on failure. I think you would be perfect for it. And he just looked at me with a not happy, and I said, no. Here, I left a leave with and about the book, and I walked away and said, I got to prepare this. And then I just started making phone calls. I made phone calls. Everybody I saw, I would put, I was at the Improv, or I was at the deli.
Excuse me. I'm hearing a lot of banging and something affecting the audio. Are you hitting a mic? Are you hitting a table by you?
I'm banging the table.
Yeah, don't bang the table anymore. Because that's not good. My guest is Steve Young, and I want to tell you the name of his book is Great Failures of the Extremely Successful. He is an award-winning television writer, a comedian, an author, and in this book, everyone from Betty White to Robert Townsend, Larry Gelbart. I wanted to know, because you started with Betty White, what was her failures on her road to success? Because she's still out there, man. She's doing it. And by the way, before you answer that, shout out to Jim who's watching the show. Jim, please share it. Shout out to Robin. Thanks for watching. Please share this. Just share it to your page. Let people know they're hanging with Langan, and we always have great guests. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Betty White.
Yeah, I ask people to tell me stories that weren't their standard stories. People will know certain stories because everybody knows it about the people. So I said, tell me a story about, about something that you really hit you deep in your heart. And of course, you talked about her husband who died very early, the fellow who was the host of Password.
Alan Lund. Alan Lund.
Out London.
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 London. All right. Well, we were close.
Yeah, but anyway, she talked about that. But what she talked about is her original show. She was on a show in a local TV show in the early 50s in Los Angeles, and it was basically going down the tubes. And so they ended the show, and she ended up spending the next 2 weeks in bed, curled up in a fetal position, feeling that she'll never again. Then she got a call. They're looking for a sort of a guest spot on a show that's going to be national. And so would she like to give that a shot? So she went in and auditioned so well. Instead of her being a guest on the show, she became the star of the show. It was the Betty White show. It was the first show. She won an Emmy for it. And I don't know what happened to her after that. But I understand that she did fairly well. But here,
a few things.
One of the greatest stories: one door closes, another one window closes, another. I don't know. Something closes, another thing opens. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Steve Young, greatfailure.com. I was like 27 years old, and I had always wanted to be in broadcasting, and for whatever reason things didn't go along that line, and I wound up going back to take some graduate classes and get an internship. I'm 27 or 6 doing an internship, which 18 or 19-year-olds do, and I was at Channel 9 in Secaucus, New Jersey, and my role proudly was to serve treats and crumb buns to people in the green room. And one day I'm in there, I'm like, hi, Miss White, would you like a crumb bun? Can I offer you a crumb bun? How about a crumb bun? And she was so lovely to me and just so warm and down to earth. I hope that's the experience you had working with her.
She was a doll. She was such a professional when she could take a line that started out serious. By the end of the line, it was hysterical. She always came prepared. She made everybody feel great. I've got pictures all over. My daughter, when she was an infant and saw the pictures over the years, a picture of Betty White holding her, thought, well, that's nice, but really an old actress. And then when Betty's life kind of turned again when she did Saturday Night Live and all that, all of a sudden my daughter became very popular because she's gotten a picture with Betty White. Betty White's wonderful.
See, this is what I love about the book. Okay, you guys, the book was written a while ago, but these are people that really set the stage for a lot of things that you may not know about. There's a woman in it, and I remember her. She was even before my time, but she trailed into the early years of my life. A woman named Nanette Fabre, who lost her hearing. And she set out to do some remarkable work for disabled, to talk about her, because you have to know that these things would not exist. People with hearing issues or what have you would not exist. Do you have your phone volume up? Because we're getting a bit of feedback.
No, but I'm turning it down. It's all the way down.
Thank you. Okay, back to you.
Okay, Nanette, just a sweetheart. She thought she was so stupid. She kept talking about it and saying, I really am not bright and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And that's the way she felt about in her career. Sid Caesar gave her a shot on the show. She was a singer-dancer, but she would actually feel that she couldn't hear the music being played. She just could hear it through her feet on the floor because of the sound of the music reverberating. And the thing is, she ended up in a institutionalized for a while, but then she came out and Caesar said, "Hey, I know what it's like too. You're on our show." And she
wonderful.
Ended up, I forget what what is the act, not affirmative action, but the
American with Disabilities Act.
Yeah.
She was one of the people who went to Congress who lobbied for the American with Disabilities Act. So this is important because some of these actors and actresses you may not know, but the way they affect your life today is what's, I think, so very important. So I was moved by that when I learned that about her. Why do I picture her with a puppet? Did she ever have a puppet? Was she ever on a puppet show? I don't know. I know
No,
it wasn't Lamb Chop.
I know what you're
I
thinking.
know.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not Lamb Chop Lady. You know, one of the ones, okay, there's two that really fascinate me in this book. I don't know why I'm getting feedback. Could it be Maury Manga?
It's not me.
I don't know what's happening. I know. It makes me so sad, feedback. All right. Anyway, one of the gentlemen in this book that really interested me was Robert Townsend, the actor, the director, the stand-up comic. And what I found so fascinating about Robert Townsend, what really stood out to me in your book about what he said, I'm going to put myself on a different audio, you guys. Stand by. 1 Adam 12. We want things to be really good here. Stephen Young, greatfailure.com. Can you hear me, darling?
I can hear you.
Okay, very good. So what I was saying about Stephen Young, what I was saying about Robert Townsend that I liked very much was that he had these roles. Okay, you know what? I'm going to edit this part out, but what I need to know, do you have any volume up on your phone at all? Because the total volume has to be down.
There is not there. Let me just see.
Or shut it off because we're getting feedback from my voice coming through another sound.
Okay. I have to tell you, every sound is down. I am shutting it down.
We're shutting it.
It's shutting
Shut
down.
that down. Shut that down.
It's taking a while to shut down, but anyway.
That's okay. That's all right. I'm just
down. It's off. So, any feedback?
We'll see. Well, sometimes you get a little feedback. We're, one-man band over here. Robert Townsend, African-American comic, performer. But what interests me, what you put in the book, is how he became a director and how he created Hollywood Shuffle, which was a satire on, I guess, stereotyping Black people in the film industry. And I remember the part where it says he was in a play, a movie, something, and they wanted it to be ghetto, and the way they arranged it and what they put on the table and how it's like, you guys, you don't know anything about the ghetto. And the director righted the wrongs. And he goes, oh, that is the man with the power. The director has the power. And then he went out and created something for himself. So out of that kind of failure of being around, well, he had adversity, but I guess his adversity, or not failure, but I guess hurdle, was overcoming all these Black stereotypes to create his own work.
Well, I would say that, first of all, Robert worked for me as a comedian when I had the clubs. I was lucky enough to be right at the point where everybody blew up. And so, people like Robert and Keenan Wayans and Eddie Murphy and all those guys worked for me back then. And that a lot of fun. But Robert, his failure was, he said, they made about one movie a year starring a Black actor at that time. And so he thought the only way I'm going to get into anything is by creating. And now I'm back. So what he did is he took loans out on his credit cards till they were basically filled up, and he produced Hollywood Shuffle, a movie which was basically a lot of sketches, but a movie about trying to make it in Hollywood as a Black actor. And he ended up, that became his stepping stone to everything else he had. He ended up with Eddie doing Raw, directing Raw.
Eddie Murphy, yeah.
Yeah, so, and another guy, there's so many good guys too. Robert Townsend is a good guy.
Oh, I like hearing. And you met with all of these guys and gals one-on-one?
Yeah, I either met with them or I talked to them over the phone. There were certain people who I just couldn't get to, but pretty much over the phone, pretty much in person. There were some wonderful things, and then there were some things that were a little bit of a letdown, so I didn't put them in the book. But everybody was willing. There's so many people willing to be very intimate with their stories because they thought it would be helpful to the people who would be reading the book.
One person, I'm sorry, I didn't love one of the things that he had to say was Chuck Lorre, who was, a master, who has done Dharma and Greg, Big Bang Theory, Mike and Molly, the Kaminsky Method. But early on, he worked with Brett Butler, Roseanne, and Sybil Shepherd. And all three of them were like, didn't want to work with him anymore. So I love that the feedback he got from one particular person was, well, they have a reputation basically of being difficult. And I'm thinking maybe the first three you weren't able to write for these women. Maybe you didn't get the sensibility. Don't blame them.
Yeah. First of all, that was, he talked about that. I did a cover story for Written By on Chuck, and then we moved right into interviewing for the book. Obviously, he's had a great success, but it came off of him. He was fired before the Jewish holidays by Roseanne. He's Jewish, and right before it, she did that. And he had the difficulty until Darwin Gregg, when I forget her name, but the star of the show, he said was her
Jenna Elfman. Elfman.
Yeah, she was a great, his angel, and now everything he touches turns to billions of dollars, I guess.
2.5 Men. No, he's done quite well. I just that little stuck in my craw. Oh, well, you're working those 3 women. Difficult. I'm like, yeah, maybe it was you, dude. You didn't learn the ropes quite yet. Have your
Chuck had some issues that he was overcoming too. Everybody has their own personal things that they're dealing with at the time, and he did that at the same time. He was turning out these shows by the dozens. He was dealing with some personal issues.
Well, absolutely prolific. Absolutely prolific. And another gentleman I love in that vein, I loved, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Gary Marshall.
Yeah, another sweet guy.
Oh,
they're all sweet.
Yeah, well, Gary Marshall, one of his adversities. Well, let's talk before we move on to what was Chuck Lorre's adversity was that he couldn't really make it at the beginning, and after these 3 shows with Roseanne, Brett Butler, Grace Under Fire, and Sybil, that he basically had his depression and was like, what the hell's my future about?
Yeah, well, it's kind of odd to talk about your failures are such a high-tech level. You're talking about, I was an executive producer of this, I was showrunner of this, and I ended up losing it. He was still hot. I mean, he was a creator of these shows too. So,
right.
Or co-creator. So, he was going to move along. But again, nobody knows what's going inside another person. And so those things were devastating to him and took him into some dark places. And the fact is that he never quit. He kept going and kept moving it. But that was basically, he had a number of failures, but he persisted.
Well, they always say you can't compare your, somebody's outsides with your insides because we don't know what we go through. And look, the guy is friggin' touches everything. It's gold. And Chuck, listen, if you want to reach out, I'm not going to hold it against you about Sybil, Roseanne, and Brett. It's fine. We can move on. I'll be there for you. I'm happy to be in a sitcom with you. Don't worry. Not his, the sitcom.
I said to him, well, I wrote a book. I gave him his first cover story, and I said, listen, is it possible that I could write for whatever the show was at that time that he was doing? I think that was 2.5 Men. And he said, he said, I got a lot of friends. And he was basically saying, I'm already filled up with anybody. And the funny thing is, who would follow him was a very good friend. I'm from Philadelphia, named Bob Meyer. Bob Meyer's executive producer, and he followed him on Roseanne. He followed him on Sybil, et cetera, and did it very successfully.
Well, I'm sure he gets everybody's his friend. They want to be on one of his, of course. But Gary Marshall, his adversity was overcoming. It sounds like childhood allergies. So it sounds like, oh, you had an allergy. Suck it up. That's what my Irish mother said. What day? So you have an allergy. But his were incapacitating.
Yeah, he was stuck in his bedroom watching other kids play outside because he couldn't even go outside. Like
a Jehovah's Witness kid on Halloween. Back to you.
Yeah, knocking on doors. But he was actually he said, I was stuck in there. I could not play. That's what I wanted to do. So I had to make myself. I have to make my own entertainment. And in effect, he was he probably would have ended up doing this anyway because he had that inside of him. But he ended up writing material, jokes, even as a kid, for him until when I forget who got it, but somebody ended up getting his material out to some comedians, and it ended up at a very young age. He was already on the road.
He did Laverne and Shirley. He did Happy Days, didn't he?
Yep.
Pretty Woman.
He did Happy Days, and out of Happy Days, it spun off into a number of things, and that's where Lemmy and Squiggy, Dave Landers, came about, and then they kept trying to spin off other things, and then he became a movie director also. Not Princess Bride.
Pretty Woman. He did Pretty Woman.
Pretty Woman. Yeah.
When I interviewed Gary many years ago when I was at Bloomberg, he said to me, "Hey." He thought I was quick and funny, which of course, he's a very astute man who could argue with him. And he said to me, "Do they give you any time off here? Would you be able to come and do a movie?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm taking time off, baby." I go, "Yeah, are you serious?" "Yeah, I'm serious." And I really believe he was sincere. I don't believe he was blowing smoke up my ass. And then a while went by, and I guess, how you're younger, you're intimidated. I finally called the office. I'm like, "Hi, my name is Maureen, and Gary Marshall wants me to be in one of his movies. I'm sure it's a small role, maybe just a walk-on, but I'm following up." And she actually goes, "Well, let me check with him." And then she wrote me a letter. He's not doing anything right now. And then nothing ever connected, but that was nice.
Oh, it's always nice to offer, and I'm not going to mention names, but if I did, it would be Larry David. And he also, told me that you're so funny. I'm definitely going to use you. And the reason he said that was because I wrote a book about him, and he did not want me to publish it. And so instead, he said, "I'm going to use you." And I'm still sitting with the book over here, although I love Larry David.
Well, you should. So this is Gary Marshall, for those of you who don't know. And this is Robert Townsend, which I should have brought up before. So handsome. One that we're talking about, Steve Young's book, and you can get it on the .com. You can get it at greatfailure.com. You could go on Amazon and all the different book sites. What did I want to show here? One particular woman, here's a copy of his book. It's called Great Failures of the Extremely Successful. It really is motivating because you see people who really get to the top, and you're like, you just sometimes think, "Oh, that just happened. They lucked out." People do luck out, but a lot of it is they almost want to quit, or they feel defeated, or you don't know what created the writer in somebody like Gary Marshall, being in his home, in his bed, and thinking, "Well, this is something I can do no matter how sick I get. There's always a bed and a pen and a piece of paper. I can do this."
And also I have a great belief out of bad failure, obstacles, traumas come good if you choose to look at it that way. I mean, I've got stories in my background that was, this failed, but it got me to this. That failed, it got me to this. That failed, it got me to this. If I didn't have those failures, I would not have had my first book. My first novel that I wrote was based on me selling something to the Disney Channel that somebody screwed up completely. They gave it back to me. I wrote it as a book, and HarperCollins bought it.
And the name of it is, please give yourself.
The name of it is Winchell Mink, and Winchell Mink, The Misadventures Begin. And
hold it up. Hold it up. I want to see it.
That was Winchell Mink.
Winchell Mink. The Misadventure Begins.
Yeah, and it's about a kid who basically had Asperger's, and but it's a comedy. And this is 15 minutes, and this is about a bad time machine that could only go back 15 minutes, and sometimes it would do it on its own.
Sometimes it would what?
It would go back 15 minutes. A kid had it, but sometimes he didn't have control of it, and the time machine would on its own go back 15 minutes to kind of learn some lessons. And every one of these books is a lesson to be learned, and hopefully the kids don't realize that they're learning as they read the book. So
those are children's books. That's cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's really cool. And you can go to steveyoung.com for your books. Is that where people can go?
Yeah. Oh, no. They go to greatfailure.com.
Greatfailure.com. But before I let you leave, Steve, one of the people in this book, not a performer, not a writer, not an actress, one of my favorite people in the world, Jane Goodall.
Oh, yeah.
I guess she's an anthropologist is her technical word of what she is. All I know is she is the one who was out in the woods with the chimpanzees. Her work has been went through, and she taught at Stanford University. She went through She went through an incredible experience of real heartache. You want to tell us what that was?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. I interviewed her, and she's a very soft-spoken woman, very nice. And I was interviewing her, and she was telling me stories that were, it's anytime anybody would interview, these are the stories that she would give. And time was up, and I just said to her, I said, "Is there anything that because there was nothing, I wasn't getting anything out of her." And I said, "Was there anything that happened that you would consider something where you learned something that you wouldn't have learned without that?" And then she said, "Well, I guess when the students I had were taken hostage by the guerrillas meaning guerrilla, like terrorist type
Warfare people, yeah,
warfare people in Africa, and then
not hairy animals.
all my friends turned against me, and I found out." And I'm going, "You're telling me that that wasn't something you brought up, that these kids were taken kidnapped and hostage, and it basically ruined your life, and at Stanford they basically turned on you and all of that stuff." And of course she was not at fault. It was something that they were trying to heap on her as her responsibility, her fault. It wasn't at all. And of course she's recovered from that, because she's a great humanitarian.
Well, she was in Zaire, and when these students of hers are abducted and held for ransom, and people were saying, "Well, why weren't you the one?" And she's like, "I was asleep. Nobody tried. They didn't come for me." And she went back to teach, I understand, at Stanford, and that's where she saw, wow, people really have their ideas of what I didn't. They really questioned her integrity.
Absolutely.
And then, that's the thing too. What resonates, we'll wrap this up in a moment, is how people will want to define you beyond who you are or not who you are. And for her to have to endure that, really her integrity, a woman who's dedicated her whole life, that's a lot when people turn on you, and they did.
Yeah, there's a lot of time. There's so much unfairness in the world, and there are things, people attempt to do good things and they get rocked for it, and their intentions are all good, and then the media will attack. The story look at what happened with Kathy Griffin. Kathy Griffin, in terms of doing something that was just really just a visual, it was an art piece and all that, and she basically lost her career for quite a time. And
it was quite shocking, though. We have to say it was quite jarring and shocking. But
yeah, but it was an attempt at a joke. It was the photographer making an attempt at some sort of art piece. I wrote an article for the Philadelphia Inquirer at the time.
Yes.
Everybody said it was a bad joke, and I said it was not a joke. It was an attempt to be a joke. It was an art piece, whether you liked it or not liked it.
And it was the photographer who said, "Hold up the head and do the kick."
Yeah.
That never came out. But I did see it jarring, thinking about the Foley family in Boston, going, "Oh my God." I did think about, because I think about that poor journalist a lot. And if I were family, on the other hand, you make terrible mistakes or judgments or not, maybe whatever, but your career goes in the tank. And I saw that documentary Kathy Griffin did while she was trying to build her touring overseas. And I thought, that poor girl needs some help. She was not in her right mind. And I think she's balanced and grounded now. She was not well.
Yeah, and she's now recovering, or in the midst of recovering from cancer too. And
I wish her all the best. Truly.
Yeah, truly. I remember when she's backstage at the Groundlings being a prop person, and she had a tough time and continued to have her tough time, but she hasn't given up.
No, she hasn't. She hasn't given up. And even too, I'm gonna close out with something first, but I want to make a little quick commercial announcement. Hold on, you guys. My commercial announcement. Okay, these are my commercial announcements. First of all, I'm going to put you up, bring you right back, Steve, and we'll close that out. Over my shoulder, you see "Don't Make Me Hate You." That's my comedy special coming out in January. I will keep you posted. But for the holidays, these are fun little grab bag gifts. So just go, and I have all kinds of "Don't Make Me Hate You" merchandise. Go to MaureenLangan.com. You'll see the store. It'll take you to a place called Redbubble that sells all of it. But there's tons of fun stuff: tank tops, T-shirts, coasters. So everybody's like, get a $25 grab bag. That's what you get. Don't make me hate you. And the other thing is, I can't believe it, but my New Year's Eve gig got canceled. Unbelievable, because of COVID. So I'm still open New Year's Eve if you need someone. And also I do a lot of corporate hosting and hosting of special needs events and fundraisers, because I use my journalism background and do a lot of moderating of New York Times bestselling author events and that type of thing. So reach out to me if you want at Maureen Langan, molangan@gmail.com. You can go right to my website, maureenlangan.com or molangan.com, and contact me that way. And if you want to support the show, you get all the videos. See, I upload all of this to the audio platforms, Apple, all of that. So please subscribe and review. But if you want to see all the videos, and I have other backstage videos that are a lot of fun, go to patreon.com, patreon.com. Starting at $5 a month, up to as much as you want. You get different things at different levels. So if you want to go to the $25 level, you can, I'll send you a t-shirt at the Phyllis Diller level. So look at that. You get the podcast and you get a t-shirt. Don't make me hate you. So you'll see. You can go all the way up to the Joan Rivers, and I'll do whatever you want, baby. What do you want, honey? But you'll see different things. We could do a comedy show. We can do broadcast coaching. We can have a comedy roundtable, through the .com. So there you have it. Those are the things I offer, and that's the way you can support the show, and I really appreciate that. But I want to bring back Steve Young. We're going to wrap this up. Again, his book, Great Failures of the Extremely Successful, and you can get that at greatfailures.com. Steve, we were just talking about Kathy Griffin, and
by the way, my New Year's Eve gig was canceled too, and so if anybody wants me to open for you when you do get booked,
well, I will open for you. It doesn't matter. We'll flip a coin. I don't care. I don't care. To work with you again would be a pleasure. And it would. So what I wanted to say, we talked about Kathy Griffin, the great, the head thing, and her having to come back from all of that, and really society turning on her, and a lot. I didn't like it, but I defend her right to have done it. But I thought it was in really bad taste. I don't want to come out and say, but I want the right to be offended. I want the right to recoil. I want the right to go, oh. And this brings me to Larry Gelbart, the great writer, the creator of MASH, Sid Caesar's one of his writers. What it brings me to, he says there are things he's explored, writing films and creating works, that there was something called Bedazzled, that it was a film, and I think it sucked. And yet his name was on that, even though he didn't finish the project because it wasn't a match. And what you have in the book that he said, and I'm paraphrasing, is I see my name on some things that I'm not proud of, that embarrass me, but yet that is part of what I have to accept if I'm going to have the success. And I thought that was beautifully said.
Yeah, he was very accepting of a lot of things. And I got to tell you, one of my biggest kicks was, I would call him for advice and he would call me right back. Just, and who am I? And one day he called me for advice on something. And it was almost like I stopped listening to him, because all I wanted to do was call my friends and say, Larry Gelbart called me.
You couldn't take it in. Shout out to David Gilbert. Thanks for watching. Jim, thanks for watching. I want you to go follow my friend Steve Young at greatfailure.com. These are the people I meet when I'm out on the road. And I got to tell you guys, as much as I love performing, this touches my heart too. Just meeting really cool people and hearing your story. It's not just the people in this book, Steve, about finding their success. It's about meeting somebody like yourself who was able to create a book, who had the moxie, as my father would call it, to reach out to these people to get them to be in your book. So it's about that creative spirit, and it's about adversity and going, no, I'm going to write the book. I'm going to reach out to these people. I'm going to make it happen. So I give you kudos for that.
Thank you.
And you guys, I'm going to put you in the green room, say goodbye, but you know the routine, you guys. Reach out to me at maureenlangan.com. Sign up for my newsletter. I don't spam. I don't do any of that, but I'll keep you updated on gigs and events in the podcast. So just go to the bottom of the homepage of Maureen Langan, and you know the routine. I'm so proud of my ending. Until we meet again. Bye, wig. I got to make sure it's the right one. Bye, Wig.
No, you cannot leave me like that.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, and feel free to share it with a friend.
Please don't go, please.
I'll be back.
Au revoir.